weirdlings! It's Margot, and today I'm bringing you 13 of the most iconic movies to get you into the Halloween spirit. If you're ready to get spooked and spine-tingled Halloween style, keep watching. These movies range from family-friendly to horror. What they all have in common is they're many people's go-to movies to get them in the mood for Halloween. I'm listing these in no particular order, as you can probably tell from the intense randomness with which I've thrown this list together. I suppose I should begin with the most obvious. The original Halloween slasher movie franchise has spanned over 4 decades, inspiring a long list of other slasher films, and is still going strong. The films primarily focus on the dysfunctional relationship between a woman named Laurie Strode and her brother Michael Myers, who was committed to a sanitarium as a child for the Halloween murder of their sister Judith Myers. 15 years later, he escapes to stalk and kill the people of his hometown of Haddonfield, Illinois, then returns in 8 sequels to wreak havoc on Halloween every so often from then until today. Pro tip: feel free to skip Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. You won't be missing anything but frustration. In 2007, Rob Zombie created a remake of the original 1978 film, which focuses more on the events that led Michael Myers to begin to kill. A sequel to that film was released 2 years later. A direct sequel to the original film, which ignores all previous sequels, was released in 2018. A sequel to the 2018 film, Halloween Kills, is in theaters now, and another sequel, Halloween Ends, is due to be released next year. 2007's Trick or Treat, an anthology horror comedy, consists of 4 interwoven stories which demonstrate that some traditions are best not forgotten, as residents of a small town face real ghosts and goblins on Halloween. The stories all have one common element: Sam, a mysterious and outwardly adorable child trick-or-treater wearing shabby orange footy pajamas with a burlap sack over his head. The character makes a terrifying appearance in each of the stories whenever one of the other characters breaks a Halloween tradition. In 1993's family-friendly Hocus Pocus, teenager Max Dennison moves to notoriously witchy Salem, Massachusetts, and explores an abandoned house with his sister Danny and new friend Allison on Halloween. After dismissing a story Allison tells is superstitious, Max accidentally resurrects a 300-year-old trio of villainous kid-sniffing witches who used to live in the house. Now, with the help of a magical kid-turned-cat named Binks, the kids must steal the witch's book of spells to stop them from becoming immortal. It's one of those things you kinda have to experience to fully appreciate. In the 1998 Disney film Halloweentown, a girl named Marnie and her younger siblings get a big shock when they follow their grandma home to Halloweentown and find out they come from a family of witches. The town is the only place where supernatural beings can lead a normal life, but trouble is looming, and on her 13th birthday, Marnie not only finds out she's a witch, but that she and her family are involved in a fight against the evil that's threatening to take over their world. There are 3 sequels to this movie from 2001, 2004, and 2006 that you'll probably enjoy if this first one's your cup of tea. Is it a Halloween movie or a Christmas movie? It's both and should be viewed accordingly. 1993's stop-motion animated musical dark fantasy The Nightmare Before Christmas follows the misadventures of Jack Skellington, Halloweentown's beloved Pumpkin King, who has become bored with the same annual routine of frightening people in the real world. When Jack accidentally stumbles upon Christmastown, all bright colors and warm spirits, he gets a new lease on life. He becomes obsessed with bringing Christmas under his control by kidnapping the Sandy Claus and taking over the role. But Jack soon discovers even the best-laid plans of mice and skeleton men can go seriously awry. For all you romantics out there, Jack and his love Sally the humanoid ragdoll are ultimate couples goals. Even if you don't watch the movie, listening to the soundtrack will absolutely drag you into the Halloween spirit. For several generations of children and adults, 1966's animated television special Is the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown is a Halloween necessity. Based on the popular Peanuts comic strip, this timeless classic follows the Peanuts gang as Linus refuses to trick-or-treat with the others and waits in the pumpkin patch for the elusive Halloween symbol, the Great Pumpkin, to appear. Linus believes that the Great Pumpkin rises out of the most sincere pumpkin patch, flies into the air, and delivers presents to all the boys and girls around the world. Because of his belief, Linus is the laughingstock among his friends. Meanwhile, Charlie Brown is invited to his first Halloween party. If you're looking for something more nostalgic than scary, this one's a safe bet. In 1991's family-friendly comedy horror Ernest Scared Stupid, Ernest P. Worrell is working as a garbage collector in a small Missouri town. Despite the warnings of superstitious local Old Lady Hatmore, he accidentally unleashes devious troll Trantor, a slimy creature confined under a tree for 200 years. Trantor changes some kids into wooden dolls and turns Ernest's dog Rimshot into a log. Ernest teams up with Old Lady Hatmore to get rid of the beast and bring the victims back to life. Maybe this is one only my generation will appreciate. If you know what I mean, Vern, then you know. The newest movie on this list, 2020's family-friendly Hubie Halloween, became an instant holiday classic. It's October 31st in Salem, Massachusetts, and the town's eccentric, devoted community volunteer and the object of his fellow citizens' derision and meanest pranks, Hubie Dubois, finds himself in the midst of a real investigation for a real murder. It's another underdog saves Halloween story. 2015's anthology, Tales of Halloween, contains 10 interwoven short stories, each from a different director, that revolve around ghosts, ghouls, monsters, the devil, aliens, and an axe murderer who appear for one night only to terrorize an unsuspecting suburb on Halloween. If you're in need of a lot more gore and disturbing content, look no further than Rob Zombie's 2016 horror film, 31. In this movie, 5 carnival workers are kidnapped the night before Halloween and held hostage in a large compound. At the mercy of their captors, they're forced to play a twisted game of life or death called 31. For the next 12 hours, they must fight for their lives against an endless parade of homicidal maniacs. Rob Zombie came up with the idea for 31 after reading a statistic that stated that Halloween is the number one day of the year when people go missing, and thought it would make a good premise for a film. These last 3 don't necessarily take place on Halloween, but they're always good to give me all the Halloween feels. The Ghost and Mr. Chicken is a 1966 spooky comedy classic. Looking to score a break as a newspaper reporter and impress beautiful Alma Parker, cowardly typesetter Luther Heggs pitches a story about his small town's haunted house. When his editor insists Luther spend a night alone in the spooky mansion where a grisly murder-suicide had taken place decades earlier, the timid reporter learns that the house contains a supernatural resident who doesn't like visitors. If you've never watched this, watch it. You won't regret it. The 1990 unsettling cult classic The Witches is adapted from one of my favorite childhood stories by Roald Dahl and is considered one of the scariest children's movies ever made. While staying at a hotel in England with his grandmother Helga, young Luke inadvertently spies on a convention of witches. The Grand High Witch reveals a plan to turn all children into mice through a magical formula. When they find that Luke is overheard, the witches test the formula on him. Now, with the help of Helga and the hotel manager, Mr. Stringer, Luke the Mouse must fight back against the witches. No synopsis can do this one justice, just watch it. And just in time for Halloween 2021 is the release of the new remake of The Witches. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm hearing it's quite different from the original, though unsettling and creepy in its own way. This version is said to lean even further into the terrifying dark comedy while updating the story for a modern audience. The Witches remake takes place in Alabama in the 1960s. This narrator is a young boy named Charlie, and his grandmother's name is Agatha. This time, the witches, still led by the Grand High Witch, are specifically targeting children who they claim that no one will miss, meaning underprivileged children or children of color like Charlie. From that point on, the remake progresses similarly to the original and the novel. Last but certainly not least is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and by this I mean all versions, of which there are many. This is the ultimate Halloween must for me. Set in the year 1790, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow is a Gothic story by Washington Irving, first published in 1819. It tells the story of awkward schoolteacher Ichabod Crane, new to Sleepy Hollow, and his hapless attempt to win the heart of the seemingly out-of-his-league Katrina Van Tassel. Local douchebag Brom Van Brunt, jealous of Ichabod and picking up on his superstitious fears, tells him a terrifying story of a headless horseman that carries a flaming jack-o'-lantern that he uses as a placeholder for his head and a weapon as needed. That evening, the horseman torments Ichabod on his way home, and the next day all the townsfolk find left behind are Ichabod's horse and a smashed pumpkin. Like I said, there are a lot of film adaptations of this story. I'll briefly tell you about a few you may be able to access. In 1949, Disney released the animated adaptation The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. It was re-released in 1958 as The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I think a lot of us are familiar with that one. I've always liked the short 1972 animated version narrated by John Carradine. From 1980 is the infamous Jeff Goldblum TV movie The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I recommend this because Goldblum. Throughout the decades, there have been a lot of Sleepy Hollow themed TV movies and specials. In my opinion, they're always worth watching at least once. In 1999, Tim Burton's popular big budget theatrical version of the legend called Sleepy Hollow was released. While it takes many liberties with the plot and characters, including changing Ichabod from the local schoolmaster to a police constable, it's a pretty good movie and pretty cool to look at, with a decidedly creepy vibe. Hell, even sit down and read the original story by candlelight. That headless horseman is always sure to give you goosebumps. That's all I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed these recommendations and will come back for more. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, and bring your friends, family, COVID Pod cult members, invisible friends, or enemies. And if you have a favorite Halloween movie not mentioned here, leave it in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching.